where I start with my work is the idea that we all see something different, and the way our brains and our nervous system are wired is to try and make sense of the world around us. And what I love about that is that therefore we all see something different due to where we've been in our lives, the experiences we've had, all the landscapes we've moved through. So when we look at something, particularly in abstract, we're trying to find things that are familiar or things that make sense to us. And then the way that I work is I work on many canvases all at the same time, and it's basically a process of mark making. So through my life and the journeys that I take and the places I go, I like to sit and look and soak in environments. And therefore, when I sit in the studio, those tend to find their way onto the canvas somehow. We moved around a lot when I was younger with my dad's job. So I was born in Scotland, and then we moved to Australia. And then
contrasts.
Yeah. I mean, just like literally the other side of the world. We've lived in Vancouver as well for a time. Love the United States. We've travelled through the United States quite a lot, all through Europe. So it's all of those places that we lived. I learned something new everywhere we were. So,
and do you think all of those different places have influenced different pieces?
I think occasionally I can see bits of Australia or bits of Canada, or I see a lot of Brighton. In my earlier work, I'm just starting to see some little bits of Shropshire and Wales now, starting to come through, because it tends to be, with the landscapes, it tends to be things that are so familiar and soaked in that end up being on the canvas. But I think that it translates somehow. So in my earlier work, for example, you'd quite often see like the Brighton Pier, but it's also events, right? So it's like there was a period of time where I would see the Twin Towers in almost every piece that I made, and that wasn't conscious. It was just obviously something that had happened to, we all experienced that event, and it obviously changed something in most of us. To find those coming out was very interesting to me. So I'll mix a colour, I'll mix a few colours, literally just start writing on the canvas, and then once the words are on there, it's kind of like broken a spell or something. So I can then just start mark making. Because that's really how I got back into painting, because I never set out to become a painter or a printmaker. I studied initially to do film and photography and installation and like big sculptural pieces. Still fascinated by all of that, and my brain still works that way. But the painting has sort of come back in a sort of roundabout trip, and it really was the mark making that got me back into painting. So literally all that happens in the studio is it's a process of making marks, making colours, and it's true what they say about when you're creating, a lot of the time you actually just spend looking. So once the process begins, once there's a few layers on the canvases, I then just have to spend a lot of time looking and turning them. So they basically build up and up and up, and at some point I'll then end up scraping things off or smudging things or using a pencil rather than the paint. So it's very intuitive.
So have you got a favourite piece of artwork in the exhibition, and can you give us a bit of insight about it?
It's difficult to say because I like them all for who they are. a friend of mine asked me the same question, and when I couldn't answer, he then rephrased it and said, "Which one would you say from a fire?"
Good question.
Which I thought that was an interesting way to focus my mind, and it would be Eurydice, mainly because one, she's been with me for a very long time, and everywhere she goes, people love her. And she's got a quite interesting backstory in that when I was making it, I was due to go to the Affordable Art Fair with the collection, and the night before, the van was coming to take everything up to hang. This one was not behaving and it wasn't coming together, and I couldn't understand why. So it was on the floor in my studio. I was wrapping everything else, and in my doing, I knocked over my glass of red wine.
Oh no!
On the canvas. It's actually a board. The original is actually on a board, and of course, initially I panicked and ran and grabbed I was trying to scrape it off and dab it off, and I grabbed the hairdryer and I was trying to dry it down, and I decided that perhaps it wasn't going to end up coming to the fair. So yeah, in the morning I came down, and actually the wine had sunk into the other paint on the board, and it sort of dried up a little bit, and it started to it was the thing that made it work. It was one of those real happy accident moments. Yes. One of the things I've always wanted for my work is for it to go into more healing spaces, so hospitals and care homes and places where people really could use that uplifting, and or spending an awful lot of time convalescing or thinking or contemplating, or in life's really tricky moments, just because of the aspect of the more you look, the more you see. So that's something I kind of wanted for the work, and other than that, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and sort of expose it to more people, I guess. In what you have here, there's 3 different collections spanning probably the last sort of 20 odd years. So I can see the difference between sort of the youngest and the oldest. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just kind of fascinated to see where it takes me and where it ends up.
Well, we're excited to see. We've absolutely loved having your work on display. It's up until the end of May, so anybody can pop down and come and have a look.